I'm Daisy Okoye, and you're listening to Kinda Sorta Brown with the University of Chicago's Public Policy Podcast.
Hey KSFam, long time no see. Welcome to our community Unity Unrest Get Down. Everyone's inside, come on and chill. We're just having a conversation about home.
Does anyone have anything to eat though?
Okay, but y'all, what does the word home feel like to you? Like, what emotion comes to mind?
Okay, I'll go first.
Let's dig into the Melanin Archives.
In 2014, Taiye Selasi gave a TED Talk recording a conversation about her book, Ghana Must Go. In the speech, she discussed the false nature of coming from a place, the offhandedness with which we claim nationality to whole countries we know nothing about. She argues that being from somewhere is necessarily not simply where you hold a passport, but where you hold experiences.
Resigning yourself and your identity to the term insert country national here does not do us justice as humans. Rather, we can more accurately base the answer to the question, where you from, based on where you possess the three R's: rituals, relationships, and restrictions. And this line of thought leads to Selasi's conclusion that because experience is local, all identity is local as well.
Home, in this sense, is defined precisely by this: locality. Selasi, who someone would jump to call a British American Ghanaian Nigerian descent, dubs herself a local of Accra, Berlin, New York, and Rome, all the places of her experienced past. Now think, not where are you from, but where do you identify as a local? Where does the home of locality lie for you? Some big questions here that we're going to ask, and usually we'll go into the KST, but this time we're going to go ahead and jump into this big conversation with the whole team in the Brown Breakdown.
It's the Brown Breakdown.
Hey KSFam, welcome to the Brown Breakdown of Season 2. So excited for y'all to be here at this amazing round table. I'm here with the entire KSB team. Again, my name is Lena. I'm here as the executive producer on this wonderful team.
Hello all, I am Dinah, the outreach manager.
Hey everybody, I'm Chase. I'm the audio engineer.
Hey, I am Daisy. I'm the content creator for KSV.
Hey everyone, I'm John and I am the communications director.
And lastly, I am Hope. I am the production manager. Some snaps for this amazing team, for this amazing new season as we're going on. I'm very excited for just talking about home, locality, and what that means to us, and what that means to us beyond the physical location. But as we're starting to talk about this physical location, and our whole KSB team is literally right now all in a different space because of the situation our world is in right now, I'm thinking about, what physical location did y'all grow up in? Are you there right now? Telling us about what other spaces you might be connected to.
I can go first. So I have grown up in apartments my whole life, and I grew up in Tempe, Arizona, which is a smaller city in Arizona, central Arizona. And for me, the sort of physical spaces that like I grew up in have always been like not necessarily temporary, but never necessarily like places that we owned. And I don't think that was ever really a problem for me, because apartments are small and I have no idea what I would do with a big house or anything like that. And because they were smaller spaces, I think that kind of like forced my family to sort of be closer with each other automatically, especially like my mom and my sister. And just constantly being surrounded by somebody, and like me and my sister are close in age, so we always were really close with each other, whether it be like always fighting or like always spending time together. So I think the physical spaces that I always remember growing up are smaller, but as a result of them being smaller, being more close-knit, having more togetherness, I should say, I guess. Especially with like both of my parents working from home now, there's definitely like a lot of togetherness, which I really appreciate now. And a third space that I've been connected to has been like my own apartment now in Chicago. And I consider that a third space really just because up until this summer, I'd never had to call my own. It was always either like a dorm or going home to Arizona. Also just like music spaces, because I used to be in choir a lot. So I spent a lot of times in practice rooms and piano rooms. And that was a space where I was really creative and like got to express myself in a different way. And also just like being in different places that center queer people or center Black people, because it's a space where I can like feel comfortable and talk about my experiences, like both like as a Black person and like as a queer person.
Yeah, kind of jumping from the Southwest to the Northeast. I'm from New York. I grew up not in the city, but in downstate. I, again, will not claim upstate New York. I said that in the first episode of season 1. It remains where I am. I grew up in the Hudson Valley, visiting family in New Jersey. Everyone was kind of up here. And that idea of like a third space and that being another location connected to my home and my school that I felt myself grow up in was actually kind of like daycare and babysitters' houses, to be honest. Like, my parents put us in daycare for far too long, and that was an experience, but it kind of made me feel like a child for far longer than I should have. And then it's no wonder that I'm like kind of intensely independent now, because I always felt this need to kind of break away from that kind of space of someone else feeling that I need to be cared for, when I felt that I was fully capable of caring for myself. Those are kind of the sentiments that I grew up with in the Northeast, and I honestly wouldn't have it any other way at this point. But yeah, does anyone else have any other third spaces that they feel connected to, or those physical locations again?
So yeah, that actually had me thinking. So for me, like whenever I bring up the concept of like, where am I from, whatever, having been born in London, England, and then, you know, moving to Chicago and having been here for essentially the majority of my life has definitely given me two very diverse and different perspectives. And I feel like that's kind of facilitated my viewpoints in terms of how I look at the world a lot differently, because coming to America, people didn't think that there were Black people in England, in Europe in general. So it was almost feeling like, and even sometimes still feeling like an outsider in a space where I feel like I've grown up for so long. Like, yes, I was born in London, England, but I was so young. There's so much I don't remember. And Chicago truly has become my home. And I think in terms of like the third space, you know, obviously I spend a lot of my time either at home or at school, but the other space I spend a lot of my time on/in is the internet, specifically my Facebook group. There's a crochet Facebook group I'm part of, a Black community crochet Facebook group, and I feel like in that space, it has really been a safe space for me where I have felt like I belonged. I didn't share exactly like the locality of where I was from, and it was more so about sharing my work and sharing our work with each other, encouraging each other. And that's a third space where, you know, I've really felt safe in, where I've gotten to be myself, but also a place where I've gotten to learn a lot and, you know, bring the skills from my own life into this space.
First of all, I just want to plug Dinah's crocheting because it's amazing. And second of all, I wanted to just talk about, you know, I never grew up in Egypt. I was not born there. And Dinah, when you're kind of talking about this dynamic of, okay, I was born in London, but I was raised here, and like, you know, you can't remember everything through those young experiences. And for me, I didn't go to Egypt until I was just before I was a teenager. So a lot of my experiences were new. It was after the revolution, which is 10 years this month, y'all. When I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago, that the 10-year anniversary of the revolution, I was thinking just about how I so closely identify as being Egyptian, because my experiences there are, it's kind of this like unspoken relationship I feel like I have there, of where I don't have to explain myself. I'm there, and there's this cultural understanding. Like, I know people, I know, you know, men hold hands on the street, and like that would be so weird here in America because people are homophobic. And like in Egypt, it's just like a cultural thing. Like, it's not seen as that's a relationship, which is like problems in itself, but it's just seen as like a closeness that you have with people, or like a kiss on the cheek, 2 kisses on the cheek. You always get that. And I feel like in the States, I'm not trying to look to have kisses on everyone's cheeks, but it is just like this thing that's like an expecting thing. And it's interesting because people would argue, or people would say like, oh, like, because you're not Egyptian enough, because you didn't grow up here. But for me, it's still something that I really identify closely with. And I think going there as a kid was so refreshing, because it's like I didn't have to explain myself, but still, like, in the community itself, third space that I identify with, people who are locals there are like, okay, but you aren't here now, like, you left. And this, like, still same goes with, people who left, like my dad, several years, he's been here in the States for years now. Even people would say, like, okay, now you're super Americanized. But, like, other Americans see him and, like, it's the opposite. So it's just so interesting, because how I can identify my third space is completely independent of how other people see me. But this is kind of what I was talking about this 50-50 of, like, I see myself in this way, and that's 50% of who I am, but then 50% of how the world sees me. And that also, dictates how I can live my life, because I can't live my life in peace if everyone around me is saying another thing. I'm not sure if anyone understands what that even feels like or means, but I feel like y'all know.
I really believe that my sense of identity and my sense of self is heavily dependent upon my past experiences and the places in which those experiences happened and the people with whom I've shared those experiences. So I was just going to ask, do you guys ever feel like the person you were as a child is different from the person you are now? As if the continuous line that is you from past to present, in between there somewhere, there is some sort of discontinuity where the person you were when you were younger is a separate being from the person you are now. Okay, I feel that now, moving to Chicago. When I went to college and I was placed in this new space with new people with whom I shared no experiences, and I've just had no experiences in general. In that place, I felt a sort of discontinuity, because the person I was and the way I built my sense of self was heavily dependent upon my environment at home and the experiences I had there. So I think when I'm homesick and I'm in Chicago, what I truly miss is that stability, that groundedness, that continuity that comes from just having lived in that space. You really come to know, like, who you are based on your past. And I feel like, well, I'm getting there in Chicago, that discontinuity has kind of caused me to really try to reevaluate and have to figure out again who I am. So I just want to ask you guys, what do you miss when you are homesick or when you're not at home? What is it about home that you guys don't have in other spaces?
I resonated with a lot with what you said, John, in that, like, you felt like there's a discontinuity, especially when you moved to Chicago. And I think that I relate in that a little bit. I think that my growth as an individual has been continuous. Like, I'm continuing to grow in these different spaces. However, there was such a change in dynamic in my community, in my space, and what I consider home in Chicago versus, like, what I have at home here in St. Louis, because I had multiple different homes here. So like I said, I grew up in St. Louis, 314, represent. And my home, a lot of my family members on my mom and my dad's side live fairly close, I think within 20-minute drive. So we were, pretty close to family, especially my mom's side, because they're like maybe a 5-minute drive max away. And so growing up, I was always super close to my cousins and other family members and whatnot. And then I had a very strong community at school. Like my second home, I was a part of this group called Leadership, and it was like our student council. And that was such an impactful community and like third space for me, because it really allowed myself to, reflect on who I am